Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Gouden Leeuw. This ship needs no introduction these days. We looked at the Prins van Oranje as well recently. That ship got released for Steel. A bit of an alternate version, but it's today we get to look at the Gouden, where we get to see the absurd power level on the airstrikes with this one. Even more so than the Oranje, I think this ship has much better airstrikes. It's available as a free gift in the tier 10 North Pole adventure or expedition, whatever it is. You can get this thing completely for free without grinding at all, assuming you played a little bit before this update. Now, when it comes to this game, I first have to apologize to our poor Stalingrad. I did not realize they were going to push out like this. I was getting ready to angle, and I'm going to block them in here just a little bit. I try to get out of the way as quick as I can, but I'm so sorry. I'm very sorry. I think they probably die anyway, but I certainly don't help the matter, so I do apologize. But these really are the positions we want to be in as a Gouden. Maybe not blocking our teammates in. I'm sorry, again, I'm so sorry. But this is where we want to play this ship. Up close, on islands for cover, because we can damage people over islands. It does not matter to us that people are behind islands because of these absurd airstrikes. Compared to the Prince, we do have a much better reload, even base on these airstrikes, allowing us to get them off more often and more consistently, because the lead time is 3 seconds shorter when dropping the airstrikes compared to the Oranje. So that means we have a much stronger gimmick on our hands. The downside is the main guns have worse accuracy. You have battle cruiser dispersion instead of cruiser dispersion. The DPM is similar, a little better HE DPM on the Oranje versus better AP DPM on Gouden. The AP pen is actually very similar. Surprisingly, Oranje has very solid AP pen. So the main difference is going to come down to the dispersion, in my opinion. I much prefer the Oranje guns, but I prefer the Gouden airstrike. So if you're looking for the airstrike ship, I don't think Oranje is the one to go for. Certainly, I hope I made that clear in the initial impressions on Oranje. It's still a very good ship, but considering Gouden exists, yeah. The airstrikes are so good, and we're going to see that here. I'm not even running the legendary upgrade in this game. I will show you one match with it a little bit later that I played a little while ago. Never had the chance to really show it on the channel, so this is a good opportunity. But if you have the legendary upgrade, it's going to give you another airstrike, so you can charge up to 3 of them and cut the reload down. So even better airstrike potential. Now we're reversing out of this bad situation. We're gonna be we're in a little bit of trouble here, certainly, but fortunately our Libertad sent it in a little bit and took a little bit of heat off of us, allowing us to get behind the island and relatively safe. If you're looking at these tier 10 ships, and by the time this video is coming out, it's been, what, a week, maybe more, since the update released. So you've probably already selected your ship, especially if you've been playing a little bit, got to tier 10. It's probably the Gouden you picked. I think we see mostly Goudens in the queue, maybe Schlieffen as well, certainly. I'm sure a lot of people who've been playing a while already have the Shimakaze anyway. So this probably doesn't impact things, but Gouden is kind of crazy. The ship's ability to deal damage. Look at this poor Azuma. Absolutely crushing airstrikes here. We have slightly worse pen, though, than the Oranje. So we have 37 mil pen. That's significant because we don't have 38 millimeters. That's the key armor threshold we're missing here for American battleship deck armor. Talked about that a little bit with North Carolina, but it's worth repeating here. There's quite a few American battleships at higher tier that people like to play, Wisconsin being one of them in this game. North Carolina we're seeing just because of this gift event a lot more, I think. So not being able to pen that deck armor is a little sad. You saw how powerful that was against the Azuma, being able to get those full pens. These strikes are insane. 46 mil pen on Oranje allows you to pen those American battleships, which is very powerful. It's harder to lead them, certainly, but it's super strong to have that extra little bit of pen. Here we're going to fight an Azuma bow on, and this is definitely 100% of the time I would way rather have the Oranje, just for that consistency out of our main guns. The Howden can have some good salvos, but it's willing to troll us quite often. Not only does it have worse dispersion, but it has less shells. So they do more damage, right? They're higher caliber. But the consistency, having 8 guns up front for the Oranje versus the 6 guns up front with worse dispersion on Howden, it is a downside. I do have to say that. It's been very interesting actually playing this ship again for this video after playing through the Oranje to try and make that initial video. It really highlights how much worse the Howden guns are to me. And if you're wanting that gun focused with some airstrikes, I think Oranje is a very interesting steel ship. It's just very expensive, obviously, where Howden you can get for free. And possibly just by grinding through if you didn't end up getting to the tier 10. It's not too bad a grind, although it's not as easy. Certainly the tier 10 is an absolute powerhouse. But we're doing quite well here already. This is an arms race game. I do have to mention we have all the reload buffs on our ship at this point and some HP, a bit of healing as well, helping us stay alive here. So maybe this isn't quite the vanilla version of Howden, but I'm not running the legendary upgrade, which I would highly recommend if you want to be buffing your airstrikes as far as legendary upgrades go. Certainly one of the more powerful upgrades, Colombo leg mod as well as another recent example of extreme power on the legendary upgrades here. We're a little bit liable to getting rushed down here by the Colombo and the Baltimore, but that's really not too bad. The NC here, we're isolating a 1v1. It's a little bit like the brawling battleships I'm talking about quite often, where isolating fights, not letting too many people shoot at you at once. And in this case, we do manage to take out that North Carolina. Although I suppose our Holland did most of the heavy lifting on that one. Certainly deserved the kill there for the torpedo strike. But it's nice to clear that NC when we did, as the Baltimore and Colombo are on their way. We have the AP. I was hoping I might get a cheeky shot into his broadside, but he does angle to us. But superstructure pens get us the kill on the Baltimore. And the double strike with the airstrikes on the Colombo. That puts us up to 200,000 damage with an absolutely ridiculous amount of bomb damage in this game. And that's without the legendary upgrade. It's a very powerful gimmick that they buffed even further. Personally, I would prefer the legendary upgrade focused a little more on the gun power of Howden rather than the airstrikes, just because I find them rather annoying to fight against. Your only recourse against this is kill the Howden before it gets to that pushed up island position, or run away. We'll see that in a later example of how you just have to run away. It's unfortunate, but that is how they've designed this one. I do much prefer the design of the Oranje over the Howden here, just because it's more gun focused, and I think that's really the key to World of Warships. The best part. It's these surface ship fighting gun battles that I like so much, not necessarily the planes. And while this is not as bad as airstrikes, or sorry, carrier strikes, for example, because there is a limited range here, there's a bit of risk in pushing up. Howden is actually surprisingly tanky, so there is some risk, but you're not going to die that easily unless there's more than 30 mil overmatch, which there's plenty of at tier 10, but you're not always going to see it, like in this game. Certainly, Citadels into the carrier feels good. Maybe not as impressive into a Lexington, rather a large Citadel, but it's good to see the guns doing some work. But this heal really helps you survive a lot. Certainly having some of the healing upgrades of arms race game helps us too. But the 40-second cooldown, that Ohio-style heal, is wonderful on this ship, especially when we're not fighting as many HE spammers in this case. It's just a buff over the Oranje's 80-second cooldown heal. This game, though, was crazy. 269 without leg mod. It's still powerful. You do not need leg mod to have a great match in this ship. It's really a powerful ship still. A lot of people are going to play it with the legendary upgrade just because it is so strong at the gimmick of this ship, which is oftentimes why you're playing this ship. I don't think you'd necessarily play this ship for the guns. There's probably better ships available at tier 10. In fact, there are for sure better ships if you're wanting to play more gun focused. but you can still do very well without that legendary upgrade. Don't think you need it, which is really, really nice. Speaking of the guns, though, we can actually pen battleships. In fact, even their citadels. Sap from Ilaria is tough to deal with, as well as Monty AP at these closer ranges, so we're not going to be that tanky here. But check out the damage that we're going to get. Those are citadels into Ilaria, which does have a weaker citadel, sure, but it means at those closer ranges, we are a threat to battleships, especially with our icebreaker being very tanky. At closer ranges, you're quite a tanky ship. You don't have to worry about that 30 mil overmatched deck armor because they're not having any plunging fire against you at really close ranges. So we can take advantage of that and push some battleships even and do some excellent damage to them. When dispersion cooperates. We will airstrike behind him and he goes forward, unfortunately, but we do get even more AP into him and even more citadels. I do like that part about the Howden, the AP performance. The pen is enough to deal with some of these battleships. So if they had pushed around on me last game, we have some very scary guns for them to deal with. So that's the other portion of playing aggressive on islands. It allows you to get in range with these airstrikes, which do have a 13-kilometer range, which is enough, but, you know, in tier 10, we can be more passive than that. So pushing up to those islands is good. And if people want to dislodge you, push around on those islands for you, you have some very powerful guns at close range. The AP is devastating. And the HE, well, can be a bit inconsistent. Has some pretty solid fire chance and some decent alpha damage potential when you land those shells. 20% fire chance here is not too bad considering the shell volume, though. Oranje has 18% with 3 more guns, so it's a significantly better farmer with those main guns. Again, Howden's not bad, but it is worth pointing out if you're comparing these two. But if you're someone who hasn't got this ship, maybe you don't have a lot of steel, you're looking into this North Pole expedition event, and somehow you haven't already made the decision by the time this video is coming out, then Howden is a decent option. It really is. I think this is a rather more standard playstyle in this game, so I wanted to show you this match as well, where we push up to a relatively common island, which we see around caps. Not every map has these, certainly, but a map like this, allowing us to push up in this case, is really, really standard Howden play, in my opinion. It isolates you against one corner of the map. You can angle to them. In this case, a Rhode Island does not have a lot of pen for us overmatch-wise. So we can angle bow in relatively well. We're within range of airstrikes on him as well as Moskva. This is very typical island play for a Howden, and you're going to get some decent results. It does limit you a little bit, and certainly in carrier games, your excellent AA isn't going to fire through islands, so it does leave you a little more vulnerable to carriers, but in this one, there is no carrier, so we're okay. But in this case, at least this update, you might find yourself fighting a lot of other Howdens in your match. So suddenly these islands are a little bit less good to sit on because you could just airstrike one another. I've seen that plenty of times. Well, both trying to get footage for this video, but also recording some of the other gift ships in this expedition event. It's been rather funny to see all the Howdens in the matchmaker just airstriking, pushing up to islands opposite one another on caps, and just airstriking one another. Very, very silly gameplay, I will say. The matchmaker probably hasn't been the best this Christmas update. I don't know if you've been noticing that, so don't be too discouraged. Hopefully it goes back to normal after everyone gets their gift certificates, grinding through that with the snowflakes on each ship. Maybe it goes a little more back to normal, but yeah, it's been a little awkward, to say the least, this Christmas update. Rhode Island turns around to push back in, and again, we can poke out here a little bit. They are pushing to the B caps, so maybe we'll go deal with that after. Not a lot more happened this game, so we'll move on to a legendary mod match where I will show you the power level of that like mod. It is rather extreme, the ability to store up 3 of these airstrikes, and worth getting if you do get yourself a Howden. But an okay, decent start to that game that is a very good way to go about playing Howden, at least at the beginning when you're not used to this ship. You can play a little more open water too. The armor, again, is relatively good. It's not the most maneuverable because the build demands you not run propulsion mod. It's a little bit awkward in that way. I suppose you could run propulsion mod, but then you're nerfing your airstrikes down quite a bit. Less HP on the planes, as well as longer reloads. So we don't necessarily want to be doing that. We're going to miss all 3 of our drops on that, Monty. We'll get some good drops, don't worry. But the key here is that you can store up 3 of them. It is very, very powerful. If you're wondering about this skin as well, I was looking into this game around the Kings of the Sea tournament time, and this was the Kings of the Sea camo. So that's why we're running that one. It's a little bit extreme, but I typically am trying to run the more standard camos, certainly. But we'll run this game with it, I suppose. And I do think it will take you some time to get used to these airstrikes leading them. Even the Howden airstrike does take a while to learn. The Oranje is quite a bit harder. That extra 3 seconds matters quite a lot, in my opinion. But even the 14.5 seconds or so, it will take you a while to get used to leading these against targets that are maneuvering. Thunderer is an excellent target for us, though, because 32 millimeters of armor everywhere. Thunderer, Republic, Bourgogne, these types of ships are the ones we want to be striking. Bourgogne, it's a little harder because it's so maneuverable with that engine boost. It's much faster, of course, but these are the people you want to go after. We get the fire, and then we load the AG, maybe get some perma-fires. We're also playing with Malta here, so yeah. A 2-man div of double leg mod Howden is pretty toxic to fight against. I won't lie, this is a pretty rough div to face, and you can see how the enemy team has just sent it all the way back to the IJ line there on the 910 line as well. So we pushed up rather aggressively, trying to get into this sea cap. We managed to do that successfully, got to the closest islands we could possibly get to their spawn, and they just moved away outside of our airstrike range. That's kind of what you have to do if you don't manage to kill these ships while they're on their way to those very aggressive positions, because they're just going to strike you over and over and over and over again. With this legendary upgrade, you're getting 52 second reload time on these airstrikes, so a little longer than a Vermont salvo. Here the Vincent was a little bit too quick for us, so we do miss the strike. In this one, I had not played the Howden in quite some time. I have a lot more practice now recently playing Howden to compare to the Oranje, playing Oranje as well. So a little bit better in that first game because that was the most recent game I had played. So I had a lot more practice. This one, we're a little bit rough on those airstrikes. Still getting some decent damage, certainly, but not quite as good. I will say the AA is quite strong on this ship. You will still need to get some lucky flak bursts. You see here the Malta is still able to get through and get a drop on us. He's going to lose some planes, sure, but if you want to actually prevent the strike, this is not the AA to do it unless you hit flak bursts. That's the only way you're actually going to shoot down a squad before it gets to you. We had 91% of our AA remaining too, so we still had most of it, I would say. Submarines, I gotta talk about too. We haven't mentioned it yet, but that is a key weakness of this line and of this ship. You have airstrikes, but they are not ASW airstrikes, so they're only bombs that land on the water. So anytime the enemy sub is around, you gotta get directly on top of them to drop your ship-based ASWs, which is very bad. Very, very, very bad. So you're quite weak against these submarines. Here we're seeing the excellent rudder, well, maybe not the rudder shift, but the turning circle radius. It drops a little too close for that first torpedo, and then we're still just able to turn and not take any torps from that Malta drop. Very impressive on the turning circle radius there. Our HE does all right against him, but when the submarines are on the surface, you can one-shot them, actually. They have to be on the surface, though, so I suppose there's a bit of a trade-off there. I certainly would prefer they give us an alternate plane that also gives you the ability to deal with the submarines instead of just these ship-based ASWs, but they will still hit for some very good damage when directly on the surface. Malta gets spotted, the ship this time. Unfortunately, Malta, our div mate, did go down there. When you're caught in open water, and especially when you're against HE spam, you will die rather quickly. You will burn out. You will notice that. I think that's the offset that this heal is for. The Oranje has normal cruiser fire durations, so then it gets a normal cruiser 80-second cooldown on its heal. I think that's the trade-off they're going for. I'm not sure about that, but that would just make sense to me. But it does mean you have to be very careful about getting caught against some HE spammers in this ship. And at the end here, this poor Yamato. This is not a fun ship to fight. I think that's the key problem with this line and this ship. I'm a little worried about what they're going to do about the light cruiser line that they're preparing. Still in testing, remains to be seen what they do with that, but I'm very worried about how many airstrikes and how quick those airstrikes recharge. This ship is already tough to fight. It's not very fun. And some of those light cruiser versions are getting even faster reloads, at least in testing. I do have to say, they could change it, but we'll see. Yamato gets lit on a double fire. The fire chance on these bombs is, of course, very good. I probably am not quite patient enough here with these bombs. Probably should have waited for him to damage control his fires there. But regardless, we have another bomb coming up in 8 seconds, as well as one already charged up. Something you should be looking for, at least if you're wanting to maximize your damage output from these bombs, is if you're in range, using the bombs when you have them fully charged. Like when the third one comes up, use it. So you're always on reload with at least one bomb. We get very lucky to survive here, by the way. Didn't particularly play this game that well, I will say. I made a lot of mistakes in this match, and we're still actually getting some very solid damage. But if you save up your bombs and wait for that last one to reload, then use it. So you're always reloading one. That maximizes your DPM while still holding 2 in the tank for when someone damage controls a fire. Because then you can get permanent fires like we have on this Yamato now. That's what you use the follow-ups for, potentially. Or, you know, if like a 32 mil battleship grounds on an island and is a very easy target, you could certainly go for the alpha damage play. The scary thing, of course, is when you div them. And I've run these divs. We ran this div in this match even. So not really one to be on a high horse here telling people not to do it, because it's in the game. Wargaming allows it. So who am I to say no? But it's not a very fun div to fight against, okay? I'm sure the enemy team was not particularly happy to kite to the IJ line to just get out of the airstrike range. Our teammates finish off the Yamato, and that's an 195k damage, where I made a lot of mistakes in this one. I could have done much, much better. It's a strong ship, and I hope I got that across, but also tempered with the I don't like this ship being in the game. I hope I also got that message across. If you're looking to pick it up for free, I think it's a solid pick. I think it'll take you a little while to get used to the leading of these airstrikes, but they're very strong. And also the main guns are quite powerful too. You don't necessarily need that legendary upgrade. And as for the build on this ship, I think there's a couple different ways you can play it, but if we're honest, we're probably playing this ship and this line for the airstrikes, so building it out for more main guns and sacrificing the airstrikes is probably not the way most people are going to be playing this. So taking Airstrike Mod 1 here is really, really helpful. 25% aircraft HP means more of the bombs get through. So if people manage to shoot down planes, you're just losing damage out of these airstrikes. So that's why it's really good on top of that reload time. So getting it down to 68-second cooldown on them. And that's without Legendary Upgrade. Remember, Legendary Upgrade gives you a further 25% and an extra slot to charge a third airstrike up. It's very powerful, but as you saw, the ship can perform even without that. We are taking main guns here, as well as in the 6th upgrade slot. If you have it, though, you probably do want to run this one. Again, it's an airstrike ship. That is how it's going to be played. You also want to focus fire training here. You want this on your commander for that further 15% airstrike armament reload time. That's what we want to take here. I don't believe the special commander buffs that portion of the focus fire training. I think it's just the AA damage. But in this case, we're also going Survivability Expert, Superintendent, Conceal. We have very good Conceal at 10.3 and decent amounts of HP. we do get through those heals rather quickly. So definitely take Superintendent. That's really helpful to stay alive. You could take things like top grade, and you could even try outnumbered. I think that would be a very interesting build if you know you're going to the flank, and that extra dispersion would be very nice. Also, if you find yourself just sitting on islands a lot, AA defense, extra AA is very helpful in those CV games, or when you're facing an enemy Howden who's just mirroring you and you're both striking one another. It's a silly fight, it really is, but it does happen. So the extra AA could be useful to you, of course. And Gun Feeder is nice for swapping ammo types. We do want to use both our HE and our AP, so swapping quicker is nice. Turret Traverse is also a bit slow, so using that as well. Adrenaline Rush, notice, does impact airstrike armament reload time, as well as main guns, so very useful as well to get a faster reload. Pretty much maxed out my AR in that last game. All skill, by the way. No, just pure luck there. And that's pretty good. But 68 seconds, what does it go to, right? What does it go to? Yeah, 51 before Adrenaline Rush. I think I got it down to 40 there with that maxed out AR. So crazy power level. Fun to play. Not so fun to fight against, I think is how I would put it. And check out this armor, by the way. 40mm upper belt, 40mm icebreaker that is quite tall, I would say. And if we pull back the torpedo protection, 225 on the belt. So at closer ranges, notice you can only overmatch here, which good players will know to aim for. And now that you've seen this, aim here if you overmatch 25 at tier 10, which I think every battleship does, almost every battleship does. That's where you're going to get the good damage. You got to aim pretty high, though, to deal that damage. Otherwise, you're bouncing, and bouncing. So, sure, at longer ranges, if you overmatch 30, it's a little bit of a squishier ship. But if people are pushing you at closer ranges, this is a surprisingly tanky ship. Very tanky. Even things like Schlieffen have similar armor, right? It's similar, where you can overmatch just the top. It's a bit taller of an icebreaker, but the tankiness here is very nice. You can't just overmatch through into this bow citadel, which is above water, by the way. We do love a citadel above water. So if you're a battleship, when they go broadside, you should... we know what battleship dispersion can be like, or any dispersion in this game. You should get through. Cruisers will not, though. Very interesting that this ship has turtleback of 25mm. So this is going to bounce enemy cruiser AP, or any AP that can't overmatch 25, up and away from the citadel. It is angled enough, like German turtleback is, at least at higher tier. And if you overmatch, though, then it doesn't matter. So then you are citadeling through it. Kind of interesting that they sort of tried to make it immune to cruiser citadels, but not battleship citadels. Kind of interesting design there. Obviously, you don't want to be broadside, but if you do get caught broadside, that is an interesting quirk of the armor here. But it's a good ship. It really is. I don't want to say it's bad just because I don't want to face more of these. But I won't lie and say that isn't on my mind a little bit. I'd prefer you not get this ship so I don't have to face more of them in the queue. But don't take that too seriously. It is a very powerful ship with a very powerful gimmick that is very fun to play yourself. Just not so fun to fight against. And maybe that's more feedback for wargaming than it is for you. So thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.